Thank you. Dear colleagues, I represent Ukraine and our National University of Water and Environmental Engineering. It's Rivne City, and Lutsk National Technical University. It's Lutsk City. It's a report on the topic is offered to your attention. It's a study of change of strength and deformation properties of wood under the action of active acid environment. The purpose in recent years, the consumption of timber and by various sectors of world economy has increased. Timber is used in construction, shipbuilding, mechanical engineering, bridge construction, timber processing, furniture, chemical, mining, and many other industries. In many cases, it's exposed to aggressive environments. It's like water, alkaline, acid. It's very important to study this effect on the mechanical properties of hardwood and softwood. And that's why the purpose of the work is to establish the effect of active acids environment on the strength and deformation parameters of birch and pine wood and compare them with the parameter of standard humidity. For experimental investigations, the samples were made in the form of prism with cross sections city to city and 120 millimeters of the first grade of solid wood of different species. Birch and pine wood were selected for natural tests. There are 3 species are grown in the forest of Volyn region. It's our region of Ukraine. There is age of wood is about 60 years. Timber which was tested before impregnation with various liquids, had the standard 20 humidity. It's the standard humidity for Ukraine, and which timber we are used. Impregation of test samples was performed by the following acids. It's hydrochloric, it's 15%, lactic 40%, and acetic 9%. Timber was impregnated naturally without additional stimulation for 7, 40, and 28 days. Penetration of liquids into the sample thickness was performed in the vessel in horizontal position with a complete immersion into various solution. At the same time, the access of each solution to all parties of prism was provided. The total number of tested prism was 78 pieces. The experimental investigation was carried out on the servo hydraulic testing machine STM-100 with automated control and data recording system under the rigid mode of application of loads. The rate of prism deformation was 1.5 millimeters per minute. Experimental investigation were carried out with a single short-term compressive load along the fibers with temperature 19-20 degrees of 18-20 degrees. The destruction of sample of birch wood under the influence of lactic acid with an impregation period of 28 days is shown in the figure. According to numerous previous studies, a complete wood deformation diagram has been proposed on the basis of which we will conduct our experimental research. The diagram has ascending and descending branches. It also has certain parameters like temporary ultimate stage of wood, critical deformation residual deformation. So we will interested in the boundary parameters of this diagram. Based on the carried out experimental investigation, complete diagrams of deformation of birch and pine timber for the beginning of flowout up to complete destruction under the influence of various acid environments were constructed. In the diagrams, we always observe the two sections, ascending and descending. They indicated that timber operated not only to the point of maximum stress, but also has a certain residual strength after passing this point. According to the result of the conducted experimental, the temporary ultimate strength of wood, its critical and residual deformation of birch and pine wood under the influence of the aggressive environment were terminated. According to the result of experimental studies, the temporary ultimate strength of wood under the action of different acidic environments with the different impregnation periods was established. The influence of an acidic environment signification reduced the strength of hardwood and coniferous wood as a result of exposure to hydrochloric acid for 28 days. The temporary ultimate strength of the prism decreased to 42% compared to the strength of samples at the standard humidity. Acetic acid, it's decreased to 21% and lactic to 32%. And actually important mechanical characteristic of wood is the deformability. During the test, the deformation indices of all investigated wood species under the action of various acidic environments with different aggregation periods were determined. The critical and the residual deformation also. The following values of critical deformation were obtained, which were established experimentally and are listed in the table. The influence of an acidic environment and application increased the deformation parameters of birch and pine wood. As a result, exposure to hydrochloric acid for 28 days of impregation, the critical deformation of birch wood increased by 11% compared to the critical deformation determined at standard humidity. And pine wood 16, acetic acid 9%, birch it's 14%, and pine 18%. With lactic acid, it's 40% for birch, and for pine, it's 13%. After conducting thorough analysis of experimental studies, we come to conclusions that under the influence of acidic environment, the final deformation of the study's wood species increase in comparison with the prism tested at the standard humidity. As a result, exposure for hydrological acid 21 day birches is decreased to 21%, pines 22%, acetic acid birch 24%, and pine 9%. Lactic acid birch it's decreased to 90% and pine to 22%. And based on the result of which the following conclusion can be drawn. It's I say only few conclusions because we tell about 4-5